Continuing with the area of post-colonial studies, and as a following example of post-colonial writings, I would like today to introduce an example of post-colonial writing. It is very important as it exemplifies the types of writing produced in this area. And last time I introduced the organization, the structure of the novel Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. And Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart is an icon of post-colonial African writing. And this novel is an example of a hybrid post-colonial text. A hybrid because it borrows from the Western type of writing, that is the novel. Hybrid because it borrows the English language, and hybrid also because it mixes up kinds of writing from the area of literature, history, anthropology, and all these area, in addition to the problem of language, which it puts us as a question, justifies the fact that we have to study this novel because it is a famous book, and because Chinua Achebe is a well-known writer, and because the ideas raised in the novel are very important in the area of post-colonial studies. And Things Fall Apart, as the title shows, it is, as I said, borrowed from Butler's poem, The Second Coming, and how this poem also reflects the problem of communication, the problem of the quest for a loss of communication, and the destructive nature of the wars, and the need for a second coming for curing and remedying this loss of contact and this loss of communication. Things Fall Apart also is the tragedy of this violent encounter between the local Igbo culture and the Western British colonialism. And the novel, as it is represented, it follows a chronological order. It is divided in 3 parts, and this chronological order follows the historical development which the Igbo culture has known from the pre-colonial to the colonial, and the novel represents this post-colonial spirit. And this post-colonial spirit here, through the writer, is meant to uncover areas where things went wrong, and in representing his own culture, he therefore writes back. And in writing back, he tries, Chinua Achebe, to show the strong point of his own culture and also the limitations of such culture, and at the same time traces the impact of the colonial presence on the Igbo culture and the changes it undergoes through these changes. And as I said, the 3-part division shows this historical movement. It is chronologically, yes. And what is also important is this first part, which I'd like to focus on today, which is the longest part. And I say the longest part because it is the moment which traces the pre-colonial period. It is the longest part, and it is important in the novel because it is loaded with the cultural legacy of Igbo culture. It is loaded with proverbial statements, with the local language, with the presentation of the culture, the customs of the Igbo culture before the coming of the British colonizer, that is the white man. And in doing that, as we will see, Chinua Achebe tries to respond to the colonial gaze as the colonizers, as they have wrongly represented the culture of the other as meaningless, absent, or in negative stereotypes. And as we'll see, Things Fall Apart is meant to answer and to write back to these fallacies which are presented by the colonial order. And Things Fall Apart was published in 1958, set in its late 1890s in Igbo society. And by 1952, the period of colonial rule, Nigeria was entering its final phase, a long period of colonial rule, and you can imagine the impact of these decades of colonial rule on the geography, history, culture, language, and beings, as we'll see in the novel, as the novel shows that. And Nigeria was decolonized in 1960. And the 1960s, very important period in the period of decolonization, as many, especially many African countries got decolonized, especially after resistance against the colonial rule, and many nation states got their independence, and it means the beginning of building a new nation states. With the outcome of the colonial period is very heavy load. So that is, these nations are not the same as they used to be because of the coming of the merging of the two cultures, the merging of languages, the merging of customs and beliefs. So the post-colonial period is not the same thing as the pre-colonial period through the changes that happened due to the colonial experience. And before I go through these briefly, seeing some aspect of this first part through the chapters, I start with this quote by Chinua Achebe here, who says that I would be quite satisfied if my novels, especially the ones I set in the past, did no more than teach my readers that their past with all its imperfections was not one long night of savagery from which the first Europeans acting on God's behalf delivered them. And this statement reveals the consciousness of the writer of the fact that he is writing to his people, to his readers, with the idea that he wants to show that he's committed to reflect on his own culture, on his people, and showing somehow objectively some of the imperfections of his that they exist with all their positive points and their imperfections, but they were not as savage as the Europeans admit that. And by that, he showed that he's aware of the act of writing for a purpose. It's not only to teach, but to show the truth and to reveal the truth, which was blinded by the European imagination. Another quote here shows that, again, the difference between what he is writing and the people, the readers, who are maybe foreigners and they cannot know what he's doing. Let me first, he says, make one general point that is fundamental and essential to the appreciation of African issues by Americans. Africans are people in the same way that Americans, Europeans, Asians, and others are people. Africans are not some strange beings with unpronounceable names and impenetrable minds, although the action of Things Fall Apart takes place in a setting with which most Americans are unfamiliar. The characters are normal people and the events are real human events. Quickly, Achebe admits the difference and he's aware of the fact that the others will misrepresent, will misunderstand what he is writing about, but from the thought that is the problem of familiarity and the problem of difference should be taken into account, and defending his own people, saying that they are normal people, real image. The only thing is that they are different, and we have to accept difference from the beginning if you are going to read something like things fall apart. And when I go to again to the first part, as I said, and I'll go through this brief chapter to reflect on some of the issues raised in the first part, where the writer plays the role of anthropologist, a historian, a writer, where he traces some of the aspect of cultural practices of Igbo culture. And as I said, the novel is set in Igbo culture, in a clan, in a place called Umofia. And this Umofia here is a place presented as 9 connected villages. And from beginning you can say 9. And in the novel we'll find some symbols of 9, 7, 3. As I said, number 3 related to 3 chronological events, 3 Trinity, which is the coming of Christianity, 3 wives, 7 sins, 7 years of the coming of the locusts, and 9. Now, some of the symbols are in connection, are sometimes in conflict, but they are symbolical. 9 here connected villages, because the 9 villages shows also the 9 ancestors constituting the spirit of the place. And in these 9 villages, we have one, this is Umofia, and the major character in this Umofia is a Konko. And the Konko is a very important major character. From beginning, I see that what happens in the novel is that it is based on a historical movement from beginning, the existence of Igbo culture, the coming of the white man in the second part, and at the end, it is the loss of the culture. And sometimes at the end, what we have at the beginning is missing at the end. And the first sentence in the novel starts with a Konko, and the last sentence starts with a Konko. Now, a Konko, as the title, as the name shows here, starts with an O and ends with an O. And we know that a Konko in the novel starts from nothing, O, nothing, 0. And he raises as a wealthy man with titles, but luckily, at the end, he ends with an O, another 0, from nothing into nothing. Very reflective of the tragic hero who rises and falls down. And that's another aspect of the novel. We can discuss it later. But Okonko here, as a major character, is wealthy, respected warrior of the Umofian clan. And Yunuka is his father. Unlike his father, who is weak, and we know I say Okonko is man of wealth, richness, and titles. The opposite is father, Yunuka. And Yunuka reminds me of the word eunuch, someone who is castrated, unable, and he is represented in our novel also as a weak man who always borrows money and couldn't pay his debts, and he's lazy and having children, but going hungry. And he was a skillful flute player and eloquent speaker. And we have 2 opposite characters, father and son. And the elimination of Yonoka as a castrated man, as a weak man, and the beginning of Okonko. The thing that I can get from this here is that it is a society, a culture which moves, and have the conflict of generation. The son is not like the father. While we'll see in the novel, Okonko is polygamous, while Yonoka is monogamous. Here he has one wife. And with the coming of Christianity, his son, Okonko's son Noi, will go towards Christianity like his grandfather. In the second chapter, we have town crier rings the Agni, and he calls for a gathering, the market in the morning. And here, in the second chapter, we have a market gathering of the village in a moment of anger. He did have to discuss the announcement of the murder of a woman in the market. We have again violence, and there is anger and indignation, and the call for a meeting. We have a culture where we have discussion, a meeting outside in the market, agora-like, where everybody is going to speak his mind and express kind of democracy there. And the problem here is that this decision is that they must hand those who commit the crime, a virgin and a young man, or to go to war. So, and Umofia has a reputation for fierce warriors, powerful magic. And here, Okonko again has taken 5 human heads in past battles, and he drinks palm wine from his first head on important occasions. One aspect of violence of this culture, which probably the writer here directs his criticism to this physical violence, which is characterized by the Imofia and Okonkwo as an example of masculinity and physical strength. And this emphasis on physical strength, probably it is a reason to the lack of this reflection on the act. And here the boy, Komofuna, goes to Kongo for safekeeping. So they bring Komofa, and he is going to live with Kongo as a son. In the third chapter, Yonoka, Kongo's father, he never had successful harvest, and Deptan paid us no title, and he died of shameful illness. And since he died like that, swelling, which was an abomination to the earth goddess, and he was left to the evil forest to die, and not to offend earth. Again, we meet one of the superstitious belief. In addition to physical strength and physical violence, evil forest is elimination of any aspect of abomination, a belief like that. And we'll see that when they come in, the white man wants to come, they ask for a piece of land, and they gave them the evil forest, believing that some calamity will happen to the white man, but it is just the beginning of the flourishment of colonialism. And Okonkwo builds his fortune, start as a sharecropper, though he was at the beginning a failure, but slowly he comes up in the social ladder as a rich man. Yekomofuna, the boy brought to Okonkwo's home, felt homesick, and storytelling. They start telling a story here, and Noye calls Okonkwo's father, and Koko doesn't show affection, lack of affection also. This physical strength and with the lack of affection also is criticized because Okonkwo believes that it is a sign of weakness, showing one's emotion. And in the week, there is a week of peace where nothing should happen, and ironically, Okonkwo is going to be it, his youngest wife. Again, Okonkwo means the patriarchal, authoritative man. He has the authority over his children and his wives, polygamy, and he beat it. And doing that, it is to be attacked, because in the week of peace, he should not transgress or break the tradition, and he has to be penalized. And the priest demands sacrifice, goat or hen or plus fine, and Okonkwo repents and follows the priest's orders. He has to obey orders, and the punishment for breaking the peace of Ani has become mild in Umofia. Now, after a week of peace, the village began to clear land, prepare for planting farm. So there is a week of peace where things should be calm and nothing wrong happens. And after that, it is the beginning of happiness. And so before harvest, the village holds feast of the new yam to thank the earth goddess Ani. So in addition to superstition, in addition to the evil forest, they have, it is a pagan society where they have their own gods, and we have a belief in the goddess, the goddess of fertility. And women also decorate their hats, throw away unused yams, decorate and paint their skin and their child's weight, come wood in order to celebrate the moment. And the wrestling, also an aspect, decorating and wrestling, which is like a game, a moment of enjoyment. And during this moment of the game, Ekwefi speaks with Chilo, who takes the role of the priestess of Agbala. And again, it is the oracle of the hills and the caves. The invisible is controlling the reality of people. They have a priestess, this oracle, who controls them. And one of them is that the story of Okonkwo's daughter Izinma. And Izinma is a problem, as we'll see, is that it is the product, it is after miscarriages, she comes to life. And Okonkwo frequently tells the Komofanoy warrior stories. He doesn't want them to listen to their mother's stories, And in this chapter, locusts descend every 7 years, and the villagers are happy and collect and eat them. And during this period, Ozodo visiting Fomoko of the Oracle Zikri, that is, he tells Oko not to take part in Ikomofuna's death, as the boy calls him father. So Ikomofuna comes to live with Okonko's house, and he's like a father. But he has to obey the order of the clan, and Noi, his son, is going to burst into tears, and the men of Yomofia walk for hours with Ikomofuna and attacked him, and he cries, but Okonko doesn't wish to look weak, and he kills him with a machete. So again, another act of violence which is criticized here, killing an innocent way. And after that, Okonko is in depression, and he felt weak and cannot sleep or eat for acting like a shivering old woman, becoming like effeminate. So this emphasis and exaggeration on masculinity is also criticized here in the novel. And while they are talking, the foreshadowing of a certain, someone speaks of a certain Amadi, here they call him a leper, and he passes through village frequently, and those who know Amadi, it is a polite name for leprosy, and it is the white skin. And early we can guess the gradual coming of the white man, because the skin color is a symbol of the coming of a new race, a new culture. And the problem with Izinma, as I said, one of the daughters of Okonko, is that came after 9 miscarriages. Look at 9 villages, 9 miscarriages. And Izinma is sick now, and they are afraid that she is going to die. And Izinma comes after different birds, and every time she gives a name, positive name, to a son or a child, so that he or she can continue. But the medicine man warned that she's Anubanji. And Anubanji, according to the superstitious belief, is a wicked child who continually re-enters its mother's womb only to die again and again. So what he did at the end, he mutilated this medicine, mutilated the dead body, corpse, and third child, and in order to discourage Anubanji's return, and he drags it again to the evil forest. Some of the superstitious belief which are negatively presented in the novel. After that, we have ceremonial gathering, ancestral spirit, and the Igugu, that is masked man, including Okonko himself, that they settle disputes in the village. But one village man complains that such trifling, we should not waste our time in unimportant, significant matter. And this foreshadows that there are other serious matters that are coming. The story of Izinma, when she is sick, they were afraid that she is going to die, and Agbala says that she wishes to see Izinma, and she takes her to the cave, and Okonko take with him his machete, fearing that something wrong will happen to Izinma. But at dawn, Chilo silently takes Izinma to his hut, that is his wife's house, and puts her bed, and Okonko was gravely worried. He was worried because he loves Izinma. Preparation for Oberika's daughter's Uri, and Oberika, by the way, in the novel, stands as he is one of Okonko's friend, stands for reason. He tries to reason things in Yomofia, which is missing, while Okonko is represented as an impulsive character, a violent character. Oberika is voice of reason in the novel. And in this ceremony, villagers, again, the group contribute food, and Oberika buys a huge goat to present future in-laws, and fiancé family arrive. We have a moment of feast, and the feast was a success. A moment of happiness, gathering, a description of family life. There is always this element of gathering and sharing. And in the last chapter, I mean chapter 13, Ozodus died, and his death is announced. And this Uzud here, who had been a great warrior, and he had 3 or 4 titles, which means a very important personality in the clan, and his funeral is large and elaborate. And in a moment of celebration, Okonkwo accidentally kills Uzudu's 6-year-old son. And killing a clansman is a crime against the Earth Goddess. And we said another example where Okonkwo commits an impulsive act. And this means that Okonkwo is going to move to the mother's land. And according to tradition, the man burn Okonkwo's buildings and kill his animal to cleanse the village, because Okonkwo has committed a crime. And it is a punishment, so he has to move from the father's land into the mother's. And you can see in a patriarchal, conservative society, Okonkwo is going to live as weak, again, effeminate. And he always tries to fight against this idea of being effeminate. He's a masculine, powerful man. And the more he fights, the more he falls into that trap. And the more he tries to be powerful, masculine and powerful, his son also knows he will join Christianity, a weak, effeminate character. And Obrikas also, as I said, he is the man of reason. He always asks questions. He mourns the death of his twins, whom his wife was forced to throw away. And also, having a twin in this culture here is like something bad, and the twins have to be transported to the evil forest. And you can see there are some of attacks to some of the negative cultural practices in this culture. It is either the superstitious belief or the belief of the evil forest taking away all these negative things into the evil forest, which the white man will come and start by the evil forest where he starts his presence there. Briefly, I have gone through these 13 chapters, which are the longest. I see that this part 1 is, as I said, very important. First of all, because it is presented as an anthropological documentation of the Igbo society. That is to say, the writer is presenting the communal spirit of the villagers, the social structure and hierarchy, also the importance of orality, proverbs, storytelling, and as means of either telling story, communicating, and wisdom. And also it shows the richness of the culture, the organization, the belief, the custom, the ceremonies. Besides the imperfections, superstitious beliefs, forest, the evil forest, and while doing that, the protagonist, the Okonkwo here, physical strength, hard work, social promotion, which is an icon of Igbo society, which is positive. However, with impulsive characteristics, he is afraid of being effeminate, and opposite to his father, because his woman-like failure is one of the negative part of the story. And besides, the writer presents aspect of this culture which is based on polygamy, importance of masculinity, and hierarchy and titles. A very important structure of a society that exists with all, he says, as Chibi says, with imperfections. It exists there with positive things, but also with the imperfections. Why does the writer give a detailed account of Igbo culture? With proverbs, Part combines Western linguistic forms and literary traditions, and with Igbo words and phrases, fables, tales, and elements of African oral and communal traditions. And as I said, because in the African tradition, all the relations or the culture was oral, the importance of orality. The problem with this culture is that it is not written. And so the means that Achibi is using is English, and in writing a novel, we find that we have 3 levels of language. We have the standard English, we have the pidgin, which is the medium between the oral and standard language, and we have orality, which is predominant in the first part. And as long as we go on the second part and the third part, we saw a gradual decrease of orality and the elimination of this gathering culture. All the things we see in the first part disappear by the second and the third part, which means that there is another culture which is going to take place gradually, which is that of the British colonialism. And doing that also actually helps record and preserve African traditions as well as to overcome the colonialist language and culture, so reducing the power of dominant culture, reflecting on his own, writing back the colonialist view that claims that African societies are without culture and need to be civilized. A very adequate reaction to this colonialist view, as I said here. Now, doing that, the writer admits that African society have their own culture and they have their own civilization, and the only thing is that they were misrepresented or they were unknown. So, and shows also the Igbo society, like any, has its strengths and weaknesses, and by doing that, the writer admits that we exist with our positive points, with our imperfection, like any other culture, but it doesn't mean that we are what the others have represented us. Also, in this first part, the importance of oral tradition, proverbs, song, folk tales, to illustrate tradition. Songs are sung in the village to do with traditions of wrestling, marriage, work, and even death. So in any moment of gathering, there are these songs. And many proverbs refer to animals in the bush to make a cultural point. Also, proverbs sometimes describe cases like this one. Looking at a king's mouth, I just select one. One would think he never sucked at his mother's breast. So Okonkwo has been proud as a king, but also very self-supporting and an have a quick rise to fame and fortune. Very positive description of the major character. The first part also reflects on the belief system. Igbo beliefs were once very tribal in nature, and before Christianity, belief system revolved around one particular god named Chukwu, and Chukwu here was all-powerful and omnipresent god. It means that these people were not savage. They have their own belief, they have their own gods, they have their own culture, and representation symbols and sanctuaries for him can be found almost anywhere. Homes, compounds, buildings, and even village parks and squares would display this depiction of Chukwu, and Chukwu here is made of wood, and we know that wood here is very symbolical of the existence of nature, fertility, and power, and this belief in the power of wood reminds me of Susu Donaimi, who says in her poem, if you want to know me, examine this piece of wood. Examine this piece of wood. This piece of wood reflect the identity of the speaker. Examine this piece of wood. Piece of wood is a symbol of life, is a symbol of fertility and of longevity. And not only do you have their belief system in God, but also they believed in many smaller deities that would compete among themselves. Religious ceremonies, Chi also was a god seen as individually personalized. If someone says yes to Chi, he exists, Chi, a powerful personal god. And the people believe strongly in one's ability to improve status in the present world or afterlife through change. If someone says yes to Chi, his Chi responds positively. So, belief in strong will and submission to the will of gods. Belief in many gods, in ghosts, ancestral spirits, even certain animals were sacred and they prayed to their ancestors, and they revered the python as the most sacred animal and called the rainbow the python of the sky. The existence of a belief system, very important also. It is a response to the Western absence of recognition of this belief system. Customs as well, ceremonial masks, the Gugu, leaders of the community, and they have a position of judging, meeting, making decisions, and they were wearing ceremonial masks. and you would make ceremonial decision for the Igbo people, such as setting property dispute, deciding whether to go or to war. So it is a moment of where decision is made. Drinking palm wine also from human skull was part of religious ceremonies, and Okonkwo had 5 skulls to his credit. Village life, the villagers were warriors, farmers, craftsmen, and the man's crop was yam, the king of crops, a very important product, a symbol of fertility and richness. Drums, very important, part of everyday life, part of the religious ceremonies and rituals. Kola nuts served also. Village customs life in Yumufa was very structured and daily life and many important rituals. Important traditions for welcoming visitors, for attaining the respect and social status, for treatment of women, going to war, getting married, and for settling disputes. Celebrations, giving thanks to Ani, goddess of fertility, sacrifices, oracle, evil forests. So a variety of beliefs, customs, and also superstitious belief, showing the existence of a certain life. And at the end, I have to quote Achebe from Morning Yet on Creation Day. African people did not hear of culture for the first time from Europeans. Their societies were not mindless, but frequently had a philosophy of great depth and value and beauty. They had poetry, and above all, they had dignity. It is this dignity that African people all but lost during the colonial period, and it is this that they must now regain. I believe that Things Fall Apart is meant to make people regain this dignity through this use of, first of all, presenting of this existence of one society, one culture, and the richness of this culture. And doing that, Chinua Achebe is aware of the fact that he must make people aware of the existence of such